Yusuf, he had that little spark in him. He inspired his brothers. I saw it early on. My cousin's going places.
So my first question is, did you always wanted to be a director growing up? And who inspired you while pursuing your dream?
You know, I wanted to be a director. I know certainly by the time I was 12 years old, I wanted to be a director. Prior to that, the idea was I was going to be an inventor. And I think that's kind of still in my heart too. I went to engineering school for undergrad and grad school. And I have a love for science, and I also have a love for filmmaking, but filmmaking is really in my heart. That's what I've been about since I was 12. So it's been a while, you know, but I guess inspiration wise, there's two things, but I'll tell you the probably more exciting part. My grandparents were actors and activists. They're Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee. So if you look them up, they've got decades and decades of groundbreaking work that they've done as actors in America. And so through them, I was able to be on sets when I was a kid. I was able to see, you know, up close how these films were made and feel the magic of being on a set, and then later go to a premiere. And also, I guess combined with that, it's coming up in a family full of storytellers. I don't consider myself a storyteller when it comes to sitting there hanging out telling stories, but when it comes to creating films, I think that's kind of more my lane. And so growing up, my childhood, my family, that sort of put me in a situation where filmmaking came in front of my eyes, and I fell in love with it.
What inspired you to pursue this subject matter as your next subject or project?
Talking about for StormOverBrooklyn?
Yes.
Well, I received a call from one of the producers, Victorious DaCosta, and you'll see his name in the credits. He and Charles Darby had been working on doing a documentary about Yusuf Hawkins since 2015, and they called me in 2016. And after I got an understanding of what happened to Yusuf, you know, because I was 10 years old when Yusuf was killed, so I didn't have an adult understanding of what was happening. And I was not in Brooklyn. So I got the call from Victorious and Charles, and we met a few times, and I read a lot about what happened to Yusuf. And at that point, I was like, you know, the anniversary of his murder was coming up because that would have been August 2019, and we're talking 2016. And the idea was we're going to make this film no matter what, so that we can honor what happened to Yusuf by the 30th anniversary of his murder. And, you know, I don't like to just tell films that are just tragedies for no reason. I was like, how can we tell this story and give it contemporary relevance? And one of the things that I was thinking about a lot during that time was the idea that racism has become more underground now in America. And a lot of people are in a position where they can deny that racism is a problem, and they can offer the sentiments that suggest that we have progressed way beyond the ugly racism that we can see from the 60s, et cetera. And through telling this story, I was able to, as a storyteller, say, you know what, no, we haven't really changed that much in the last 30 years. And I think we need to do some looking at ourselves. And so I said, you know, that is a constructive reason to tell this story. And so once I realized, okay, we're not just honoring Yusuf, which is worthy in and of itself, but we're not just rehashing the story of Black people being victimized, is what I didn't want to do. And this is more of a contemporary message told through showcasing what happened to Yusuf, and that message being, we need to look at ourselves and we need to stop believing that we are much better than we were 30 years ago. So that inspired me, that drove me, and I said, you know, let's make this film. And I was 100% dedicated to it.
Yeah, and I just have to say, you did an excellent job in doing that.
Thank you.
And my next question is, were there any other titles you came up with besides StormOverBrooklyn? If so, what were they?
I don't remember all of them, of course, but Charles came up with Storm Over Brooklyn. And when he said that, we were all like, yeah, that's what it is. And then later we said, we can't not have Yusuf's name in this thing, like this is about Yusuf and people recognize Yusuf's name. So we changed it to Yusuf Hawkins, Storm Over Brooklyn. But before that, the one name I remember we were thinking, Never Forget Yusuf Hawkins was what it was originally. Never Forget Yusuf Hawkins. And so we changed that. And then one of the other ideas was to have it say his name is what it was supposed to be. But luckily we didn't choose that because there was a Say Her Name documentary that came out at a similar time. But yeah, we had a list of names that we were considering. But once we heard Storm Over Brooklyn and once we actually included that title in a pitch, it was sort of locked down because everyone liked it too much.
How beneficial was the book for the color of his skin in making this documentary?
Well, that was absolutely beneficial. John DeSantis's book, For the Color of His Skin, was my window into what happened to Yusuf before I gathered more information. I bought that book. It's in my other room there. If you look at it, my notes are all through it. I've read it several times. And speaking with John DeSantis was helpful too very early on. He was a consultant. Sometimes films need a board of advisors. So he was on the board of advisors. So For the Color of His Skin was very important to us. So I recommend that book if you want to get a broader understanding and even a more detailed understanding of what happened. Storm Over Brooklyn is more about the emotions and it's not an investigative piece. So if you really want to get down to the details, read that, read For the Color of His Skin, because that's what helped me. That gave me the baseline of everything. It helped me develop the story structure, decide what's in the scope and out of the scope of the story, helped me choose the key characters. And then after that, did a lot of other research with, interviewing people. But I definitely recommend that book if you want to know more about what happened to Yusuf.
And what is your favorite moment in the documentary and why?
I guess I like, it's bad, but I like when we're talking about Russell Gibbons. If people are watching, they don't know. So this story, it's real life situation is Yusuf and his friends went to Bensonhurst to purchase a vehicle, and a mob of 30 or more young Black men surrounded Yusuf and his friends, and Yusuf ended up being shot to death. And that is absolutely not funny. What's funny to me is in the film, you see the one Black man who was living and friends with some of those people in that mob in Bensonhurst. He lived and grew up in an Italian community, and we have him on film generously, and I respect him so much, sharing his opinion about what happened. And so in the documentary, though, we have other people's opinions about Russell. And a lot of times when you're a Black man who grows up in a white neighborhood, which I partly did, your opinions about race can be different than those of Black men who grow up in other neighborhoods that are majority Black or majority a mixture of cultures. So I think that what made me laugh was the commentary made about Russell during the documentary, where someone said there's always one nigga. Like all of these white friends, they always have one nigga in their group who they approve of, even though collectively as a group, they may have racist mentalities against Black people. So to me, the honesty in the documentary is what's the funniest. So when there's a Black man saying there's always that these groups of white people have that they approve of, I was like, man, I can't believe he said that, but I've seen it. I can't disprove it. But that being said, I really appreciate Russell being in the film because he's a smart guy. He's a smart guy. And when you're able to watch a smart man speak eloquently about his perspective, and you disagree with that perspective and probably believe that his perspective only exists because of the siloed environment in which he spent his formative years, then you're able to see that, okay, we're shaped way more by our immediate environment than by the color of our skin. And I hope people get that from seeing that in the film, that, okay, you might disagree with Russell, but his perspective and him being right there explaining it to you is, it's the case in point that will prove that race and having a perspective aren't married together. Just because you have one shade of skin on your face doesn't mean you believe a certain way, love or hate a certain type of people. And Russell was a great way, I think, in terms of story structure to articulate that.
And what is the biggest surprise that you experienced after directing this film?
COVID. COVID was the biggest surprise because, you know, after all these years, 2016 we premiered in August 2020 on HBO. We expected to have a premiere somewhere at a theater and to be able to show to Yusuf's family what we put together, and to be able to enjoy as a team of directors, producers, a crew of people who created this documentary, share the moment and watch it on screen in one room. And we were excited to have been accepted into Tribeca and to go on that journey. But everything lights went out when you know, COVID hit New York in March of last year. So that was the biggest surprise, honestly. And it's still sort of moving when we're able to at least do Zoom premieres. But me and my colleagues haven't had a chance to watch the film together as a group, you know, other than one or two of us in the edit bay with Jeremy, the editor. So that was surprising. But I'm grateful also because it's on HBO Max, everyone can see it. And the film got out there, and Yusuf's family is I think in their words, they're very grateful for it, you know, and that means the world to me.
And is there any plan for you guys to come together and watch it in a theater after, you know, COVID, all this is over?
I would look forward to that. There aren't any plans right now, but, you know, I really feel like it's gotta happen, especially in Brooklyn. You know, I think, oh, you know, one thing I can tell you, and we haven't made the announcement yet, but the plan, we're co-naming Verona Place to Yusuf Hawkins Way. Kareem is his middle name. So Verona Place is the street in Brooklyn where the mural of Yusuf has been constructed. So you see in the film a mural of Yusuf, that's on a street called Verona Place. So now it's gonna be co-named Yusuf Hawkins Way. And that is a direct result of the efforts that we made as a film crew, and I'm really proud of that. So I think we're gonna do it. It's not really up to me because it's up to the city council, but the plan is to do the co-naming on Yusuf's birthday, March 19th of this year, 2021.
That's an excellent news.
Yeah, I'm happy.
And if you had to describe your experience with Miss Hawkins using 3 words, they would be? Delicate comes to mind. She seemed delicate, and I felt the need to be delicate when speaking with her. Not because she couldn't handle anything that was sent her way, but just out of respect for what she's been through. Peaceful, she seems to me, and emotional. You know, some people put their emotions away, and I think she's right there with you. So delicate, peaceful, and emotional. You know, those are 3 words. Could you discuss any interesting fact about any of your interviewees from the documentary that wasn't displayed in the future? Luther Sylvester. So Luther is one of Yusuf's friends, one of the 4, you know, so who went down to Bensonhurst that night. They went down to look for a used car. They had never been to Bensonhurst, and it's nighttime during the summer. So they went together. There's Troy, there's Claude, there was Luther, and then there's Yusuf. So Luther, who's in the film, he had never shared any of what he shared on camera with anybody since he was a kid. He'd never talked about being there with Yusuf. He never talked about the hate crime happening, witnessing his friend being murdered. He said he never talked about it with his colleagues, with his friends, with his kids, anybody. In 30 years is what he said to me. And so I want to put that out there because just out of respect for that, because I'm sure it takes more than a lot to relive that. And so he did. And so I really appreciate that. And I think that people watching who don't know that will look at it a little bit differently once they realize that. And then also the footage of Luther walking through Bensonhurst and going to the spot where Yusuf was killed. He did that same day, and I think that took a great deal of strength from him. So I'll say that because I respect that so much.
By the serious subject matter of this project, were there any times you or your crew members had a light or fun moment while making this documentary?
Yeah. I'm trying to think of what I could share, like almost dropping things on set, just you got to keep it light, you got to keep it light. I don't know anything that I could just recall off the top of my head, but I do remember laughing with Javon and Victorious and Charles and everybody whenever we could, because it's such heavy subject matter. But I do know Reverend Sharpton in our second interview with him, because I don't know if you could tell, we interviewed him twice, and Jeremy, the editor, he put it together really well, so it's hard to tell. But in our interview, right that day, he got a call and his daughter was giving birth. His daughter Dominique was giving birth to Reverend Sharpton's grandchild, so we had to cut the interview a little bit short, obviously. But I think that wasn't funny, but it's loving, because that's life. We're doing all this hard work out here, and love and family is number one. So I think that was a tender moment, I would say. I think that's a sweet moment to me.
How were you able to get Joseph Farmer involved in the documentary? Was he ever reluctant to get involved in it?
What we went through his attorney, and I don't think he was. I don't know what he was thinking about before he accepted our invitation to be interviewed, but he didn't seem reluctant. I'm sure he was probably reluctant because he might have felt that we were going to come and attack him, through our line of questioning, but that didn't take place. Melanie Cherie, she's a co-producer of the film. She and I think Victorious and maybe Javon set that up. So I didn't have to do that legwork. I didn't have to do the reaching out for that one. I just had to do the interview and get up there and direct. But yeah, it didn't seem like it was a lot of hesitation. Sometimes people want to just get their voice out there. They might feel like they're going to be judged negatively either way, but maybe it's better to have your own voice than to not. So that could have been his state of mind, but I'm really not sure.
Did you or your producers ever attempt to reach Kit or Modelo to do an interview, and how did that go?
Yeah, it didn't go well. We did it after a long time. There's no response, and then we got a response from one of his relatives that was very aggressive. So we stopped. But that, I really wish, as a storyteller, even though people might appear to be the bad guys in the story arc, we're all human beings. So I wanted to give them an opportunity to present themselves as human beings on camera. I don't know what Keith has gone through over these years, I don't know what his state of mind is, or, what have you, but we did reach out, and I wish that he and other people from Bensonhurst would have participated, because I feel like I would have treated them with respect. I don't think I would have put them out there as and slanted it or anything like that. But maybe some other time they'll be ready to speak about it in some other project.
How did you conduct your interview process in general? How were you able to get your interviewees to tell such details about the situation?
I'm not sure. There's a lot going on in a city at any given time. And
when I'm interviewing someone, I need to ask them as much as possible. I usually talk with the key players 1.5 to 2 hours on camera. So with that amount of time, you're given the space to get detailed. And I think, at first I was thinking about it on a few levels, like the Bensonhurst community is one thing to talk about. East New York, where Yusuf's grandmother lived and where they stayed a lot, was important to talk about in terms of them as environments and the cultures in those two different neighborhoods. Politics at the time is something to talk about. What was happening within the family is something to talk about. So you could come up with 100 questions about each of those things if you wanted to, but if you want to keep it around 90-minute interview, you got to hone it down. So I would suggest if someone is looking to interview somebody to primarily try to extract from them their recollection of what they witnessed firsthand and try to bring them to a certain moment so that they can speak about those moments as opposed to what they heard or what they speculate had happened. So casting the subject of the interview is probably the first step in getting the most out of the interview. Because if you cast somebody who wasn't there, say I wanted to talk about what happened during the protests, marches through Bensonhurst, it's great if I ask somebody from, say, Lenore Fulani's organization, because they were right there and they could tell me what happened, as opposed to me asking someone who lived in California who heard about the marches, So, and then when I know who they are and what they witnessed, I'm able to spend more time in the interview with that, So depending on who you're talking about, you do the research, you read the police reports, you read the newspapers, you read the books, and through that, you can kind of have a timeline of where this person was and what their stance was this month, or whatever, and then say, okay, I need them to cover this part of their life with me right now because it'll help this story in this way. And I flesh out as many questions as possible. And then when I start the interview, though, I don't even really reference the questions until afterward. I just try to have a conversation with them, and I know enough about them to ask what I need to ask and to get more details about, do follow-up questions about certain things because I just kind of know, but it allows the conversation to proceed organically. And then after about 45 minutes of that, then I'll look at my questions and double back and be like, you mentioned this and that. Can you tell me about this? Or I forgot to ask you about this. And then when I'm done, I ask everybody in the room, including the camera operator, which is sometimes me, and the producers, everybody, do you have any questions for this person? Because there's always somebody who's coming from a different frequency, a different perspective, fresh eyes, or maybe eyes that are more in tune to something than I am. And a question will come out that's I'm like, oh wow, yeah, I never thought of that. And you ask that because you don't have another chance to get this person on camera, most likely, so you get it. And so with all of that, and then handing it over to the editor and then me combing through the transcripts, we get a good amount of information from each interview.
After filming the documentary, how has this experience affected your life personally?
Oh, in a positive way. I mean, it gave me a certain amount of credibility as a filmmaker to have a documentary on HBO. I've learned a great deal through the people I worked with making this film. I'm teed up right now to create additional projects, and I'm excited about that. I just got nominated for an NAACP Image Award for Best Directing of a Documentary. I'm very proud about that. So, and then trust is a big thing. I feel like when people watch this film, they can trust me as a storyteller to honor their experience in a respectful and powerful way. And so this is kind of like a calling card for me in that way, in that respect. So it changed my life in a positive way for sure.
And your previous answer just segued to my next question. I just want to say congratulations on your NAACP Image Award nomination. Where were you when you discovered that you got nominated?
I'm working. We're always working on stuff. And I think it was Jackie Glover who emailed me and told me that I was nominated. And Jackie Glover was at HBO, and in the meeting when I pitched the film to them. So she was part of the team at HBO who greenlit this whole thing and allowed this film to be an HBO production. And so it was nice to have her be the one to let me know that I was nominated as director. And she's at ABC now. I think she's the head of documentaries at ABC now, doing some great things. So yeah, it was Jackie Glover who reached out to me.
And if you win, who would you like to thank first? Also, are you gonna have a speech prepared, or are you just gonna wing it?
They have you pre-record your thank you message now because of COVID. So it's sort of funny because I had to pre-record an acceptance speech to something that I didn't win yet, So, but I kept it short. But I primarily I thank Yusuf's family because for them trusting me and for them participating and being courageous in that way. I thanked Javon, my producing partner. He's been riding with me for like 11 years. We've been pushing hard to develop our production company into what we envision it to be. I thank Victorious, who I mentioned, and Charles, who brought me on board. And I thanked Jeff Friday and Melanie Cherie and Jonathan Chin and HBO. So, without those key players, you take any of those people out of the equation, the film wouldn't happen. So I made sure to thank them. I only had 30 seconds, so that's all I could really, really fit in.
If you could write or direct any film adaptation of any novel, article, or short story, which one would you like to adapt?
The Invisible Man. If I could make the epic film of Invisible Man, that would be a dream. I think that book is stellar, and I think you're not allowed to make a feature film about it. I think Ralph Ellison didn't want it to be made into a film because he didn't think, as from what I heard or read, he didn't think that filmmaking could actually do justice to what he wrote, which is probably possible. But I think there's some talent out there, and if that could be made into a reality, more people will be aware of the magic that's in his book. So Invisible Man is what I would direct.
This is my last question. What was the last movie you watched in theaters before the lockdown due to COVID-19?
In theaters? I think it was the Uncut Diamonds, Uncut Gems, the one about the jeweler. Yeah, I think that's the last film I saw in the theaters. I think.
People in this post-Obama era want to look at New York in the 80s and 90s in the lens of today, don't quite understand that the racial divisions were over the top.
Bensonhurst made people say, New York is like that?
As he stopped, a bunch of white guys came around the corner, surrounded us.
Next thing I know, I hear gunshots.
I gotta ask you flat out, who killed Yusuf Hawkins?
It wasn't my friends, and it wasn't me.
My son has been tried and executed only because of the color of his skin.
This should have never happened to him.
They evaluate the evidence, they'll realize it wasn't a racial case.
You'd have to be stupid to not determine that there was a racist element.
Martin Luther King used to say, make the comfortable uncomfortable and make the uncomfortable comfortable. So I said, we should march in the neighborhood.
They did not want us there, and they made that known.
It's like unbelievable how people acted out.
We're not just gonna go away quietly.
We will be back, and that is a fact. One more win has taken our stuff.
My brothers definitely went down. People was yelling out his name.
You said, you said, you said, you said, you said.